The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 88. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field to talk shop. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube, or join the mailing list at ronmckeefery.com to stay up to date with the latest guests and anything else we have going on. This week, interviewing a good buddy of mine, Rob Skinner. I've known Rob for a long time. He's one of the go-to guys for me for nutrition. He's the sports dietitian for the Washington Redskins. He's been at Georgia Tech. He's been at Virginia. He's been with the Navy SEALs. And now he's in the NFL. And, you know, we have a great friendship, but also he's a wealth of information, just real information. What I like about him the most is that he's just a guy that's down to earth, that understands that there is a big gap between that clinical nutrition and getting the athletes to buy into what you're doing. So we talked a little bit about, he's been in a lot of different environments, college and pro and tactical and the whole deal. And so we talk about those different populations and how, he's able to, what's kind of universal amongst all the different athletes and soldiers and things along those lines. We talk about recommendations for places without nutritionists, which is obviously a majority right now. We talk about how to advocate with your sports administration and try to find money and resources for an RD. And then we just get into his personal journey and some of the obstacles that he's overcome to get to where he's currently at. And we can all learn from those types of things. So know you're going to really enjoy that one. Before we do, we want to get shout out to our sponsors, Sorinex, Play, Ignition APG, and of course Elite Form. Again, just a few weeks back, we were at the NSCA conference, had the opportunity to sit down and talk to those guys again, Skip and the gang there, and I always walk away just blown away by what they have going on and how they're integrating their products into strength and conditioning programs across the world. They're out to in Australia right now, putting up a lot of things and just some really, really cool stuff. Make sure you follow them on Twitter. They are always constantly updating and putting out resources, especially based on velocity-based training and tracking and integration. And I can't say enough great things about them and their motivation. When we talked about them coming on as a sponsor, we've put the product in. I've used the product, love the product. But, really didn't come down to any of that. They just purely wanted to give back to the profession. And, what a great testament of the type of character they have. So please do me a favor. Go on Elite on Twitter. Follow Elite Form. Let them know that you appreciate them being involved with the show. And, that way we can continue to bring this show to you for free with all the other sponsors as well. So can't say enough about Elite Form. Also, Strength on Demand. If you enjoy these podcasts, then you'll definitely enjoy Strength on Demand. Strength on Demand, strength-ondemand.com was created so that you have an online archive of all these strength and conditioning clinic presentations out there. And it's like, we just got back from a great conference not too long ago, and yet now all of a sudden all those presentations kind of go away, and I just kind of hated that. And so what we've done is we've partnered up with some coaches around the country and been able to get some of those presentations and throw them up. And we throw one up at least once every month, if not more. And, there's just such great content out there that you can watch on your time for anywhere you have a Wi-Fi connection or internet connection, and sharpen the sword, whenever you want. And that's really why I created it for me, because that's what I wanted, to be able to kind of have one central location to be able to go to, instead of trying to find it in all the different, external hard drives I have and things like that. So I know you love Strength Dash On Demand. Go check that out and, see if it's something for you. But I want to spend some time. I want to spend a lot of time with Rob Skinner here. So sit back and enjoy. We'll talk to you on the other side. Hey guys, welcome back to Our Game Chalk Talk. Got a good buddy of mine, Rob Skinner, with us. Rob's a good buddy of mine. We've had a chance to speak at lots of different conferences together. I've talked shop with him 100 times by phone and getting advice and nutrition. He's kind of my go-to guy, and so I wanted to have him on the show just to talk shop and really have him share some of the knowledge that he's shared with me over the years. So, man, I appreciate you being on the show, brother.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Rob, kind of go into your story, man, because it's a cool one, and I want everybody to know kind of how you got into this field, and then kind of places that you've been to land where you're at with the Washington Redskins there.
Yeah, well, my journey started in completely a different place. I was in the Army, and I blew my ACL out, gained a bunch of weight like most injured people do, and started reading everything I could about nutrition and how to drop some pounds. Then people kept coming to me saying, hey, how did you do it? And I found myself kind of coaching them up on what they needed to do. So when I got medicaled out of the Army, I wanted to figure out how to become an expert in nutrition. I'd been a paratrooper and an expert marksman, and I was an infantry guy, and I wanted to be an expert in nutrition. So I called someone and said that, and I don't know who. I wish I did. I called someone and said, hey, how do I become an expert in the field of nutrition? They said, well, go become a dietitian. So I went back to school for nutrition and dietetics at Georgia State. I happened to do an internship at Georgia Tech. And then they asked me to stay on for a one-year position. They had enough money for a one-year position for a sports dietitian. And so I stayed on for that year, and it ended up being a 10-year stint at Georgia Tech. After that, while I was there, I got my exercise science degree. And then in 2007, I left and went to University of Virginia to help them start their program. And then 3 years after that, I got an opportunity to go work with Naval Special Warfare down with the SEAL teams in Virginia Beach. And I spent a great time there. Built the first Navy feeding facility with no fryer, and it was great helping those guys out and working with those guys. And then 2 years, last season, not this season, but last season, I got a call from the Redskins, and they said, hey, would you like to try the NFL out? And I said, sure, let's do it. It's all part of the adventure. So then I'm here. And that's basically my path.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's again, we talk about it on the show quite a bit about it's not something that just happened overnight, right? You just didn't land at Washington overnight.
Success.
Lots of years, lots of different, lots of leg work to get to where you're at, but what's really cool is you've been in a lot of different populations, all right? The Army, college, pro. You've kind of seen the gamut, between the golfer or the cross country, maybe with an eating disorder, to the 6'9", 380-pound tackle that's got to lose some weight or whatever, And so what's kind of been some universal truths, some universal problems that you see across the board nutritionally, and then how kind of you've addressed those?
Well, I think that probably, and I stole this phrase from one of my former professors, but good nutrition may be common sense, it's not common practice. And we used to tell our operators, if you practice shooting 3 times a day, you'd be a really good shot, right? Well, you get the opportunity to practice good nutrition at least 3 times a day. But people just don't do it. So I've always believed, I had a German volleyball player who used to call me the food coach. I've always believed that educate from the plate. If I can be where the athletes are eating, then I can give them education on what they're doing at that moment.
Right.
And so I think the universal is everyone who eats thinks they know what to do, because everybody has to eat. The difference is there's a big disparity between doing good, general nutrition and optimizing performance. And to optimize performance, you really got to get in the weeds about what you're eating, when you're eating it. I tell people the secret, the air quotes, the secret to performance nutrition is quality, quantity, and timing. Those three things: quality, quantity, and timing. And if you got the quality right, but the quantity's off, you're going to have to make some adjustments. If you've got the quantity right, but the quality's off, you got to make adjustments. And then the timing is key for all of those athletes to maintain their energy during, before, after, whatever they're doing. So
sure.
Yeah. So those three, if I had to say there's a secret to sports nutrition, and I don't believe there are any secrets, is that you pay attention to quality, quantity, and timing. Those
sure.
three.
You kind of dive into that a little bit with, you've got to develop great relationships with them, I would imagine, and breaking bread is kind of one way to do that, I would imagine. But what are some other ways that you've kind of developed these relationships with athletes to where they trust you, and saying, you know what, hey, this is a guy, this is my go-to guy?
One of the things I never do is I never treat their questions like they're dumb questions. I've always, if an athlete comes to me with something and says, hey, my mom said I need to, drink aloe vera juice in order to, then we'll discuss why their mom believes that and what the reality is, what the legitimate evidence-based science is. Because a lot of times there are no data to support that Chinese remedy or that old wives' tale thought. And then sometimes there are. There actually are. My mom used to tell me to gargle with warm salt water if my throat was sore. And I thought that was the dumbest thing ever until I realized in a microbiology class that streptococcus does not grow in a salt environment. So she was helping me out, but I didn't believe it.
Right.
So you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper and not just a surface answer that you learn in a book. You've got to go collective experiences. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think to build confidence is I've strived to work with a team of people. I got a lot of strength coaches that are my buddies, but they didn't become my buddies overnight.
Right.
Being a value to the strength and conditioning professional, being a value to the athletic trainer with medical nutrition therapy, both of these things, if approaching it that way, then the athletes see you in the training room, they see you in the weight room, they see you at meals, you're there, you care. That's
right.
it. And so developing those relationships and them knowing that you're more than just the food Nazi. You're not the person that's going to slap food out of their hand. I believe in education, not deprivation. We don't do those things. What we do is we say, hey, look, here are your best choices. I've even told coaches, they said, well, what should I eat? And I say, this is what you should eat. I said, well, I don't want it. And I was like, well, you didn't ask me what you wanted. You asked me what you should eat. If you want that, eat it. But you got to suffer the consequences.
Right.
So if you got to do an extra hour on the treadmill, that's fine, as long as you realize you got to do it.
Right. Well, that's a great point. That's one of the things that drew me to you way back when was, you really did. You kind of took a strength and conditioning approach to the way that you coach your athletes and hold them accountable and things along those lines. And that obviously resonated with me and most strength coaches that we have lots of common friends. What are some things that maybe across the board from strength coach perspective that, because it's not, and you're totally not this guy where it's like, you're doing this wrong, do this. But what are some things that you're seeing that could be done better by strength coaches?
Well, strength coaches the strength coach perspective is performance. It is not. I used to tell people whenever I went for interviews, I'd tell people, "Hey, look, the training room brings me problems. The strength coaches bring me performance issues." So that really is where, and the dietitian is right slap dab in the middle,
right?
Because we have to deal with the eating disorders or medical nutrition therapy, and then we got to figure out a way to help the strength coaches and the coaches make the guys better than they currently are. So I think for strength coaches, one of the things that can be done to improve is that they don't lean as heavily as they have in the past on supplementation. They focus on the quality and quantity. And then strength coaches, really, the timing is the biggest issue for them, because whether they've got a workout, whether they did pre, whether they did post, you know as well as I do, a lot of the kids you have coming in, they haven't eaten all morning or all day or whatever. We got the strength coaches have to come up with strategies, and that's where supplementation becomes advantageous.
Right.
But if I have a kid who's coming in for a 5 o'clock workout and they're going to dinner at 7 or 6:30, then they probably don't need to suck down 4 shakes on their way to eat a steak or whatever they're eating. So,
sure.
And then I think probably the toughest job is high school strength coach, because a lot of the high school strength coaches I've talked to, their kids aren't allowed to eat in school. They can't carry water bottles with them, and all these. And you really got to get to that PTA or those parent and teachers and talk to them about quality strategies to improve that, because you can't expect those kids to be optimal in the afternoon if they haven't eaten for 5-6 hours.
Sure. Well, what are so when you meet with those high school coaches or strength coaches that don't have an RD on staff, what are some recommendations that you have for them to try to get some semblance of a nutrition program? Yeah,
well, so recognizing that I am an advocate for the dietitian, for sure, and I wish everybody had the monetary availability and everything to get a full-time person. But if that's not an option, then I think looking at like school programs that have nutrition support. Maybe there's a major at a local university. Maybe there's a person in the local area that is willing to come consult. Maybe there's a mom or dad in the school that is a dietitian.
Right.
So trying to use those resources as best as possible to get them to come in. Then there's other. And you got to realizing that everybody, every website out there is going to claim to be the unbiased source of nutrition information.
Right.
But we all know everybody's got a bias. So you have to if you're going to look at websites, different websites, don't look at just one. Look at multiple and try to glean some. Now, there's a lot of free education material out there from the government, FDA.gov. There's EAS Sports has some free info on their websites. GSSI's got Gatorade Sports Science Institute. They've got free info. But my advice would be, pick a couple and look at them and see what's common, because we all know that research is there's lots of data out there, and it shows you what people want you to see.
Right.
So you're going to have to make an educated decision, or call somebody. I'm on the board of a group, the Collegiate Professional Sports Dietitians Association. Look at CPSDA's website. Maybe there's somebody in your area that you can call, like you call me, and just ask questions to.
Right.
There's lots of people out there.
Well, if you're in that situation, let's reverse it a little bit, and you're the strength coach in that situation, and you don't have the knowledge that you have in nutrition. What's the message to the athletes? 5 meals a day, 6 meals a day, drink X number. I mean, what are maybe the 3 things that you have to get across to have some sort of performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can't eat bland. Like, you can't have one color. So you got to eat fruits and vegetables. You got to. Like that's a must. Most of this country doesn't eat enough fruits and vegetables, but when kids coming to you complaining about feeling sluggish and it might be a multivitamin issue, but number one, fruits and vegetables. Number two, lean choices of protein. Absolutely, we got to make sure we get adequate protein, not over amounts, not under. We got to make sure we get adequate. So. Lean source of protein. Healthy fats, always a given, right? Avocado, nuts, seeds, but making sure they get healthy fats and making sure they understand that, if they have 2 slices of bacon, that's not that big of a deal, but if they have a pound of bacon at breakfast, there's an issue, okay? So fat comes in 2s usually, 2 ounces, 2 pads, two pieces of bacon. Just go with 2 of that, and you'll be fine. And then obviously, hydration is super important. We don't want people to overhydrate. We don't want them to underhydrate. We want to replace what's coming in to replace what's going out, and so adequate hydration is important. And all those issues that come with hydration in the summertime are very, very important in health. Life-threatening at times, but for the most part, thirst can keep up with your hydration needs as long as you're not in activity. When you start practicing and it's hot and humid, then you got to amp it up.
Right.
But thirst right now for average person, thirst can keep up with.
No doubt. No, I agree 100%. What now you mentioned you're an advocate for the RD and getting to somebody in each and every program. That's something that I've fought with almost every place I've been is getting somebody in. What are some things, what's the message? How do you craft the message best? Because typically it comes down to dollars and cents, right?
Sure.
But how do you craft that message to your AD, to your president, to your PTA or whatever, you're trying to go to for these resources? How is that return on investment, but also kind of how you're able to, so from a liability standpoint or something along those lines, that this is a need, it's not a want.
Right, and I think that's probably, everybody, liability is an issue for everybody. And when you start looking at state to state have different rules on who can give out nutrition advice, but when you have somebody, if you have an issue with eating disorder or even an injured athlete for that matter, or gluten sensitivity or Crohn's disease or any kind of GI issue, then liability can be your biggest factor there. But you're not going to have that many of those, hopefully. Right. So hopefully that's the 1%ers. One other way to craft a message is our goal is to give these athletes the best in each area, the best strength coaches, the best athletic trainers, the best coaches. Why are we skimping on food quality and food education? And so that's one way I've approached it, especially when it comes, because believe me, even here, wherever I've been, I've had to fight for the dollars and cents to feed people.
Right.
And when you're trying to feed, especially in the military, you're trying to feed special operators on $2.50 for breakfast. You have to start negotiating on ways that you can get more cash.
Sure.
And so you're right, it's dollars and cents issue. I think one of the biggest liabilities, number one, but number two is if you're going to build a program, why are we skimping on? We need to build a total program, a total team approach. The other thing is, and I always encourage dietitians, is dietitians should be kind of cross certified, I think. Now, I am not a strength coach, but when I was at Virginia and Matt Bayless needed an extra hand to do mat drills in the morning, I'm there for you.
Right.
So dietitians that pigeonhole themselves into I'm just going to do nutrition and nothing else, I feel like you're doing a disservice to the field of sports nutrition. We got to know what the strength coach is doing. That's how I've been my whole career. We got to know what the athletic trainer's doing. We're not going to tape ankles. We can't do that stuff. We don't want to do that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes time for physicals, we sure can help with blood work and blood draws and things like that. So
absolutely.
There's always a place where you can help other people, and I think that's been that the dietitians are a help. They're an added help. They're an added asset to the strength coach, to the trainer, to the coach.
Well, that's been I've been preaching that for years. Is that it's its own department, it's its own area, it's its own necessity. But I've also been telling our strength coaches, our young interns and whatnot, that if you're going to get your master's degree and you're going to go to additional schooling, why not try to go and get an RD while you're getting your master's degree? And there's the obviously from a strength and conditioning standpoint, there's more opportunities right now. But then as you age and as there's as the field grows, you're able to not pigeonhole yourself as a strength coach as well, which I think is huge. But I tell you one thing that's kind of come up in our area is once you do have somebody, let's say you have a part-time person or you have a little bit of money or a position or whatever, where best should that be housed? Because right now, unfortunately, it's not its own department usually. It usually falls under strength and conditioning or it falls under sports medicine. Where should it be housed in that? Because, it's kind of, like you said, that 10% of it is that eating disorder medical part, and that 90% of it maybe is that performance part, but that 10% is pretty important,
Yeah, and I've had it a couple of different ways. I've been housed as my own department, which is it's a small one-person department,
right.
So, I've been housed as my own department. I've been under medical, and I've been under strength. And I would say, out of all those capacities, I think my opinion is being your own department is obviously best. If that's the next step down, although medical offers you some top cover, I think for sports, I think sports dietitians, I think that being associated with the strength coach is better for me. That's my opinion.
Right.
In my time, I think being housed with strength and conditioning and having a good rapport with the head strength coach, so that we both know what each other expects. I think that's been my best way to do it.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you, and that's kind of the direction I've always tried to take is that I'm able to bust right into the head coach's door and be like, look, we need this, and that's not always the case with the athletic trainer. I mean, especially if they're not associated with that sport, maybe they're the department head, the whole deal.
Right.
And I'm totally not, and everybody that watches the show knows this about me, is I'm totally not the strength coach versus athletic trainer, meathead, mindset. That's I think you're right. I think it needs to be housed in its own department, and there needs to be kind of a sports performance, a high performance manager type of model where there's the three areas. Absolutely. And they report to an associate athletic director, right, or whatever. But in the meantime, to fight for those resources and fight for that attention of the athlete and to really get things across, I think that's that area is so important. And I think what I find mostly right now, and in my experiences, has been that you get a lot of in those part-time positions, and then those those kind of volunteer type of opportunities and things like that. You get a lot of clinical nutritionists, a lot of people that have gone and they've spent most of their rotations in the medical community, and they haven't experienced that 6'8" inner city Detroit kid that only ate Hamburger Helper growing up,
Right, and that's a problem with sports dietetics in general, is that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, they have a set amount of time that you have to be clinical, and then they give you a little bit of time where you can do what you want to do. And if the student is fortunate enough that they can get an opportunity to shadow or be somewhere where there's a working sports dietitian, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, all the Tennessee, all these people are having them now. But if they get to go there and do that, then they're better trained. They're still not trained. The Academy put together this CSSD, this Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics, and you have to have 500 hours counseling athletes to qualify to sit and take that exam. So I would say if you're looking for somebody who's had some kind of experience with athletes, if you look for a CSSD, now the issue with that is it usually takes a while to get that 500 hours if you're not full-time somewhere. So there are a lot of good people out there that really want to work with athletes, but and as you know, but it just doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
So they got to do something else too. And dietitians should never forget their clinical model because it helps with every aspect of sports, but we're not necessarily a clinical setting when we're working with a football team or any athletic department.
Right. Right. Well, that's just it. I think that's one of the things that, again, drew me so much to you is that accountability piece. It's not, I hope that you do this. It's, look, you need to, look, buddy, for you to start next year, you have to gain 25 pounds. So we got to figure out how to do that, and so that's kind of that performance kind of coaching.
Yeah, I've always believed that we got to find strategies to get it done, whatever it is. And as far as reporting structures, regardless of who I report to, I've always felt like it was at Georgia Tech. I had 17 head coaches, 16, 17 head coaches. So I had 17 bosses there. I had a head strength coach. I had a head athletic trainer. I had dotted lines going everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If we got to get it done, we got to get it done. I don't care who's bringing me the concern or the issue. We just got to figure out a way to figure it out.
That's right. What so I mean, obviously, you mentioned that being at the point of attack, when you're right at, when they're eating is probably the most effective tool.
Yeah.
Has there been other things that you've done, other little quick strategies that other strength coaches can kind of take and use, like the grocery store tour or the cooking demonstration or things? Is there things like that maybe you would recommend that aren't as widespread that you hear about?
Well, a lot of people are into electronic media now, so a lot of kids respond well to text, and I saw that Scott Steiner, the sports dietitian at Auburn, he just put together a app so they can go and do stuff on their phone to look at the food that's being served and how many calories and everything like that for their dining hall.
Right.
So that's pretty specific. So I think electronic media is probably the wave of the future. Getting whether it's text or emails or whatever. People don't open emails anymore. Twitter or whatever else. I think that those things are a great way, and a lot of dietitians do it. I don't currently do that, but a lot of dietitians do that, or sports dietitians do that now. The grocery store tours are great. It's just another connection. It's best done in the off season. But here now I'm dealing with like trying to get people chefs and stuff for their homes and things like that. So it's different at different levels.
Yeah.
What goes on. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, buddy, we always end the show with some resources here. So, you said Mitch earlier, the food coach, so what's been the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received?
The best piece of coaching advice I've probably ever received is do the job, do it well, and don't stop till it's done. And my boss at Georgia Tech was Coach Larry New. He was a defensive coach, and he became an administrator, and he was my boss. And it didn't come off his whiteboard until it was done. And so you're not going to skate on a guy like that. And I think that's you get your mission. In the Army, it was always, back when I was in the Army, it was mission first and people always. So you got to get your mission accomplished, but you always got to take care of your people.
No, that's great. What about a quote that you live by, or maybe that you have plastered up somewhere?
Well, one quote that I saw recently that I really liked was I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, "Don't look back. You're not going that way." And I'm a big believer in that too. I try to move forward and not backwards. Backwards sometimes seems very enticing because it's comfortable.
No doubt.
But pushing forward always seems to be more rewarding.
What about a book, app, and website recommendation?
Well, the current book I'm reading is What Einstein told his cook. And it's really good because it's a book with a lot of questions about nutrition, things like where does sea salt come from, and the guy explains the food science behind where all of this stuff happens.
Huh.
And it's one of those things where you can break it out at a party and say, somebody says, something about sea salt, and you say, well, the red sea salt comes from Europe. It's the red color of the clay that makes that. and of course, maybe just nerdy dietitians.
Yeah, I was going to say that at the CSSD conference. Those are coming out, right?
Exactly. But it's good because people always ask me these off the wall questions about food, and this thing has the scientific answers to it. So I enjoy that. As far as apps goes, I've been looking at and using the Lose It app. Okay. People have probably heard about it or look at it, but the Lose It app it tracks your weight and your food intake, and we know tons of studies show that if you document things, you are more successful. And it goes on your phone or your iPad, and it's really good. I've had success with guys because if they're a little higher, they know they got to work out harder, eat a little less, and if they're a little lower, they know they're in their range. So I think it's pretty good.
Oh, that's good.
And as far as websites, I think one of the ones I like for supplement information is Supplement 411. Supplement 411 has a high-risk list on it, which is neat because the anti-doping agency, when they test a supplement and from whatever company and they find something in it, they post it to this high-risk list. And so it'll say the company's name, the product, and what was found in it. So that's pretty bold of them to do.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good because if a company's got one product that's tainted and they found it, there's probably other products that are tainted too.
No doubt. Well, it's typically the manufacturing processes, right?
Exactly. It's all deals with the source of the ingredients, which most of them are coming from other countries that don't have near the detail we do in manufacturing.
Yeah, no doubt. Lots of good stuff there, man. Lots of good stuff. Well, brother, I know you're busy, man. You got a rare day off coming up here pretty quick, and
yeah.
I truly appreciate you coming on the show, man, sharing with everybody, and just the resource that you've been for me through the years, man. You're you're a class act, brother, and I appreciate it. I really do.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.